Hey y'all, welcome to the Throttle podcast. I'm your host, Earnest, here today, just with myself again. Another late night episode here tonight. We're going to get quickly to some other news. NASCAR has announced today that they're going to move their awards show in Scottsdale, Arizona. So basically, pretty much right in the same site as the championship. The championship, of course, being at Phoenix just a couple days before. I think it's okay to have it there in Arizona, but at the same time, I remember kind of the nostalgia days where the award show had like some flair when they did like the burnouts on the Strip in Las Vegas, and when they did it on Broadway when they were back in Nashville. So, I mean, I don't hate the move, but I also don't really like the move, especially how they're talking about how they might only invite the championship 4 drivers instead of like all the playoff drivers. And I also don't like how like the regional series like ARCA and the Wheel and Modified Tour and et cetera, et cetera. I don't like how, I mean, it's cool that they get their own award show, but at the same time, that's still in Charlotte, but it's like 2-3 weeks later. I kind of liked it when it was all kind of engulfed in one award show, because like you could, you can celebrate Cup champion, Xfinity champion, but you could also celebrate kind of these regional champions that don't get a lot of the spotlight. So it was kind of nice, but again, I don't hate the move, but I also don't love the move either. But getting right into some Bristol news, Allmendinger with the shocking pole run in qualifying, getting his first pole since 2015 Watkins Glen, like over a decade. But the tires were the story during the race. Those tires chewed up and corded pretty quickly, led to 36 lead changes. However, there were a lot of cautions, and by a lot of cautions, I mean a lot of cautions. Not only a season high amount of cautions, but actually a modern era record 14 cautions for 137 laps. That's 27.4% of the race run under yellow flag conditions. That's a record in the modern era. Of course, the modern era since 1972. So, over the last 50 years of NASCAR's history, that is just wild. But through all the chaos, Christopher Bell survived a late race restart, leading only 12 laps to score the victory. It's Bell's 4th win of the season, not including his all-star win at Wilkesboro back in May. It's his 2nd at Bristol, but it's his first win on pavement. He won the 2023 Bristol Dirt Race, and it's his 13th Cup win of his career. JGR sweeps the round of 16 in terms of wins. Briscoe wins the Southern 500. Hamlin wins at Gateway, and now Bell at the Bristol Night Race. And here's an interesting stat here. If we take out Bell's win at Phoenix in the spring, where he led the most laps, led 105 laps to victory, Bell's other 3 wins this season have only seen him led 21 laps in total. He led 1 lap, the last lap, to win at Atlanta back in February. He led 8 laps to win at COTA back in March. And then he led 12 laps to win the Bristol Night Race, which is kind of crazy. Mason's 5th win of the season, all 4 wins with Bell, plus the Summer Daytona win with Ryan Blaney. It breaks the tie with Haley, who has 4 wins. For most wins so far this season, Keselowski 2nd, Zane Smith 3rd, Blaney in 4th, Logano in 5th, and Corey Haim a great 6th place run in the 67 car. Now, were the tires wearing too much? I mean, I've been back and forth on this issue, and ball tire wear is kind of nice to see. There's a difference between like the slipping and sliding and kind of moving around that we used to see at something like the old Atlanta versus what we've seen like a couple times now here at Bristol. 2024 spring race and 2025 Bristol Night Race. We've seen now a couple times here at Bristol where the tire it just shreds. It doesn't slide around. It just shreds itself. I mean, even when the tires are worn down, you don't slide around. Even when you're giving contact, so it's like you try and give a bump and run or a shove and run. They don't move around. They don't slide around like tires are kind of they've been used to. I mean, it's just part of it could be the tire. Part of it is just these sturdy next-gen cars. I mean, we saw with Keselowski in the final corners giving a huge shot to Bell, but it didn't affect him at all on his way to victory. I mean, Keselowski gave a huge shot to Bell, and it didn't matter at all. Bell just kept on driving, and he drove to victory. But entering the round of 12 now, the round of 12 is New Hampshire this weekend, and then Kansas, and then the cutoff race at the Charlotte Roval. But the playoff grid, you got Denny Hamlin plus 26, Larson plus 24, Byron plus 24, Bell after his win at Bristol plus 20, Blaney plus 19, Briscoe plus 10, Chase Elliott plus 5, Bubba plus 1, and then the 4 drivers currently below the cut line: Cindric minus 1, Chastain minus 2, Logano minus 2, Reddick minus 3. Our picks for the Bristol Night Race, they're kind of all over the place. I picked Larson. He did not have a good night. Spun a couple times, had a speeding penalty, ended up 32nd. Not a great night, and we'll see how that reflects in the points in a minute. Evan picked Blaney, who finished 4th, led 30 laps, won a stage, finished 2nd in the other stage, collected 57 points, including the 5 points for leading laps. That is the most points scored by anybody tonight, and as we'll see in the points, I mean, even Mason, he won with Bell, leading those 12 laps, and Mason lost 12 points to Evans' points lead, so it's just kind of crazy. Zach picked Briscoe, who finished 9th, led 127 laps. That's the second most laps behind Ty Gibbs, 201 laps led. Haley picked Chase Elliott, unfortunately crashed out, finishing 38th, only netted 1 single point. That is tragic. And it really kind of blows up the points championship with only 7 races left. Bernardo picked Byron, who had a quiet day, finishing 12th. Colin picked Austin Dillon, who finished 28th. Ethan picked Ty Dillon, who finished 1 spot better in 27th, and Stacey picked Cindric, who led 10 laps, but caught on fire, just like his Ford affiliate, Josh Berry, and we'll get to him in a minute. But Cindric finished 30th. Let's talk about Berry for a quick second. That's just an unfortunate situation for Berry. Berry, his first playoff appearance, 3 straight last place finishes. Bristol, he just, after only about 75 laps, just ended up out of the race. He caught fire under the right front, and just nothing he could do there. Just terrible luck by Berry. It ended up being Austin Dillon, SVG, Alex Bowman, and Josh Berry getting eliminated this round. We'll see who gets eliminated in the round of 12. We saw the playoff grid, as I mentioned earlier. In terms of our grid, or more specifically, our point standings, Evan has opened up his points gap massively. He leads me now by 55 points. Okay, for context, me and Evan have been 1-2 in the point standings since after Texas back in May. That's like 4.5 months we've been 1-2. And ever since after Michigan, me and Evan have been chasing each other, and the points gap has been less than 28 points every single time until now. Evan leads me by 55 points now. That the last time we saw anybody even have over 28-point gap was when I led Evan by 53 points after Nashville. And that 55-point gap that Evan leads by over me is the largest points gap by anybody since Mason led me by 58 points and Evan by 59 points after Evan won with Hamlin at Martinsville back in the spring in late March. Almost 6 months ago. That is just crazy. That's when Haley made her first pick. That's basically when I met Haley, which is just crazy to think about. It's been that long. I mean, Evan is trying to run away with this championship. We've still got 7 weeks to go. Still time to make up some ground, but we'll see. Haley's down to 165 back, Zach 177 back, and Mason 184 back. So the points gap, I guess the race for third in points has really tightened up. If we specifically look at the battle between third and fifth in points, Haley leads Zach by 12 and Mason by 19. So it's tight there in that case. And then we get to your part-timers. So, I mean, if you think that's crazy, just wait. Because NHRA was crazy. There was chaos over in Reading, Pennsylvania for the first race of the countdown to the championship, basically NHRA's playoffs, at the appropriately named House of Chaos, highlighted mostly by Tony Stewart and points leader Doug Coletta's huge crash during round 2 of Top Fuel eliminations. Coletta won the race before crossing the center line and getting into Stewart. They got launched into the wall at over 330 miles an hour. Both are okay, but even after that, it got crazier. Coletta eventually advanced to the final round, but lost to Sean Reed. Yes, that Sean Reed. Less than 2 months after losing his left index finger in that vicious qualifying crash back up in Seattle, Sean Reed comes back for his first NHRA event and wins. Okay, he came back last week and ran the IHRA event in Hebron, Ohio. He won that too. So yeah, Reed was able to recover. and then come back, and in the first 2 drag racing events he's able to return to, he wins them both. And not only that, because he was able to have a substitute driver for the last 2 events of the regular season in NHRA, and he was able to qualify for the Countdown to the Championship, now with his win in the opening race of the Countdown to the Championship, Sean Reed has launched all the way up to 5th in the top field point standing. So we'll see if he can make a run. If you thought we were done, no, we're not. Cruz Pedregon won in Funny Car for the first time in 3 years. It was actually this same event at Maple Grove back in 2022, which was his most recent win. This is also the 40th Funny Car win for Pedregon, and this win moves him up to 6th in the Funny Car point standings. So another just big jump here. But, I mean, that's what the Countdown to the Championship can do. I mean, it tightens up the point standings, and it makes things exciting. But at the same time, you still have to be at the top of your game and still prove yourself why you're legitimate and why you deserve to be there. And in Pro Stock, Dallas Glenn, the regular season champion, took the victory handily after securing the number 1 qualifier, although he was aided by kind of a crazy deal in the semifinals. Dallas Glenn was set to face Greg Anderson, but he got disqualified for crossing the starting lines a second time after initially struggling with his burnout. He tried to do a second burnout, cross the starting lines again, and that's why he got disqualified. Dallas Glenn got that free bye run into the final and won the final. And his points lead over Greg Anderson, as we'll talk about in a minute, has been extended by a good bit now. And John Hall picked up his second Pro Stock motorcycle win of the season and just the 4th of his career. His other win this year, if you remember, at Norwalk, Ohio back in June, that snapped a nearly 12-year-long winless streak dating all the way back to the 2013 U.S. Nationals in Indianapolis. Pretty crazy there. In terms of points now, after race 1 in the countdown, Doug Coletta leads Tony Stewart by 18 points in Top Fuel. Austin Prock leads John Force Racing teammate Jack Beckman by 25 points in Funny Car. Dallas Glenn leads Greg Anderson now by a much larger margin, 62 points in Pro Stock. And Matt Smith, who lost in the final round to John Hall in Pro Stock Motorcycle, that is a really tight championship. Matt Smith leads Gage Ferreira and John Hall, who are tied for second in points, and they're just 6 points back right now. Pretty tight there. We'll see who's able to come out on top. Other big news, IndyCar's 2026 schedule has finally been released. It comes out today. St. Petersburg will once again open the season for the 5th straight year on March 1st. Of course, we know that the Truck Series will run as well on the streets of St. Pete the day before. That's kind of a NASCAR, IndyCar doubleheader in a way, although it's really a NASCAR, IndyCar doubleheader the following week. IndyCar will run at Phoenix on that Saturday, March 7th, during the spring Phoenix NASCAR weekend. Pretty big collaboration. And it really is huge with IndyCar running 4 races in 5 weeks in March to start off the season. Of course, you have St. Pete on March 1st. You have Phoenix on March 7th. You have the debut of the Grand Prix Burlington on March 15th. And then a couple weeks later, you have Barber Motorsports Park on March 29th. So pretty nice start to hopefully get the ball rolling and bring even more momentum and fans into IndyCar for next season. Some other highlights on the schedule. Nashville will now be a night race on July 19th, and the race will be extended from 225 to 300 laps, so they've basically made it the same distance and length as the NASCAR Cup race at Nashville. Milwaukee will return to being a doubleheader weekend. Their 2 races are August 29th and August 30th. Laguna Seca will now be the season finale on September 6th. And no Mexico City race. They were trying to work really hard on that, but they weren't able to secure that. That news broke a week or 2 ago. And the Iowa doubleheader was dropped from next year's schedule. That kind of makes sense. We talked about it on this show after the Iowa doubleheader. After the Iowa doubleheader happened in mid-July, the attendance was very poor. I mean, I get it. Hy-Vee left as title sponsor, and like they didn't have the concerts anymore, and I knew that was a big draw, but still, I mean, the attendance was really poor. They only had probably about 20% capacity, and Iowa Speedway only sits about 30,000 seats. So that's 6,000 seats per race. I mean, 12,000 fans, that's not that good. That's like truck race standards, ARCA race standards. I mean, so it's just, I was originally thinking back in July that they would do 1 race for the Iowa doubleheader and not 2, but you know what? I mean, dropping it off the schedule entirely isn't a bad idea either. I think it's huge for Milwaukee to gain their doubleheader back. You know, they just had the 1 race this year, but it was absolutely gorgeous weather, great crowd, thrilling race. with Christian Rasmussen scoring his first IndyCar win, duking out and beating Alex Palou, who of course locked up the championship, his 4th championship, including 3rd in a row, and he won the Indy 500 this year as well. So pretty huge moment in that race. We also talked about that a few weeks ago on this show as well. But looking ahead now, NASCAR heads to New Hampshire this weekend. The round of 10 elimination race for the Truck Series and the round of 12 opener for the Cup Series. Remember, New Hampshire had a test earlier this year. Defending winner Christopher Bell, who of course won last week at Bristol. He's won 2 of the last 3 New Hampshire races as well. He tested for Toyota, Chastain tested for Chevrolet, and Logano tested for Ford. So 3 playoff drivers who might have a leg up this weekend. We'll see. NHRA goes 4 wide this weekend at Charlotte at ZMAX Dragway, the second of 6 races of the countdown to the championship, and it's the first time in history a 4 wide race has been featured in the countdown. We'll see how crazy it gets. I mean, it was already pretty crazy this weekend. We'll see how crazy it gets when it's 4 wide, but it's 4 wide in terms of contending for a championship, with a championship on the line. And there's some pretty tight championship battles right now in a lot of the major classes, so we'll see. And of course, IndyCar's 2026 schedule is now out. Only like 166 days until they return to the streets of St. Petersburg, Florida on March 1st, 2026, as part of their doubleheader weekend with the Truck Series, which they raced the day before on February 28th, 2026. Getting into our picks for New Hampshire real quick before we wrap this up, I'm picking Briscoe. That 19 car, as we've seen a few times this year, when that 19 car ran good with Truex at a few different racetracks with James Small, Briscoe has run good at those tracks as well. Briscoe ran second at Sonoma and Dover, Truex's 2 best tracks back when he used to run. Truex also used to be really good at Watkins Glen, and Briscoe managed to finish 5th there. In terms of New Hampshire, of course, Truex has been always good there, Furniture Row days, DEI days, and especially in the JGR days. 2023, he got his 1 win at New Hampshire. Of course, he dominated that race, leading 254 with 301 laps. Briscoe hopefully will look to do the same this weekend. I hope Briscoe would do the same this weekend. And what's interesting is Briscoe has run pretty dang good here at New Hampshire, even in lesser equipment. Last year in 2024, of course, Bell won, but Briscoe finished second in Stewart-Haas Racing equipment, so watch out for Briscoe. He might just turn into Truex and just serve up another Truex domination style affair, but it ends up being, Briscoe. Kind of like how Briscoe did to win the Southern 500 a few weeks ago, so we'll see. Evan is picking Byron this weekend at New Hampshire. Zach's picking Chase Elliott. Mason's picking SVG for some reason. Maybe he sees something I don't. Haley's picking Hamlin. Bernardo's picking Brad Keselowski. Colin's picking Blaney. Stacy's picking Larson. And Ethan from Taco Bell, he's going with Zane Smith this weekend at New Hampshire. So we will see what happens. 7 races left to sort out the standings, and we'll find out. I mean, I'm losing by 55 points in the standings right now to Evan. It's the largest points gap that anybody's been in from first to second in basically 6 months. So we shall see how that goes down, but that is all we got for this week's episode of the Throttle on the Floor podcast. Make sure you tune in on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and tune into the Chilwell Media Instagram. I got a bunch of new photos up there, and we'll have some podcast stuff up there very soon as well. I'm trying to get credentials, or at least secure availability to go to NHRA's Midwest Nationals at the end of this month in a couple weeks. So we'll see if we can do some promotional stuff and media stuff down there. But we'll wait and see whether I'm by myself or with Evan or whoever. But yeah, that's all we got for this week's episode of the Throttle on the Floor podcast. And we will see y'all next week.